Light. Fire. Justice. He was the first, and he created the astral plane. His word became law to guide mankind. The word of Innos is holy to the people of Morgrad, and it is spread through his priests, the magicians of fire. Welcome to the Gothic lore series, in which we will dive into the world and history of our favorite game. Since Gothic underwent several retcons, retroactive changes in the continuity of the story, we will also speculate a bit about certain topics. Without any further ado, let's take a look at the fire mages of Khorinis. In the northern parts of the Khorinis Valley, the Monastery of the Order of Fire is nestled in the rugged mountainside. Surrounded by a lake, it sits elevated on a rock with a bridge leading over the watery depths. Rectangular in shape, its walls seal it off completely from the outside world. In the center of the monastery, the Church of Enos stands tall, its belfry towering over the adjacent buildings. Like the fortress of the old camp, the red roof is heralding its allegiance from afar, the royal color associated with the god of fire. The church itself is adorned by stained glass, and a rose window can be seen under the belfry. Inside, the altar is guarded by 5 statues, 2 paladins clad in armor at each side, dwarfed by the massive likeness of Enos at the back end. While the idol of the god is of fine stonemasonry, his lifeless servants seem to be made out of bronze. At the base of the massive statue, the seat of the High Council of the Magicians of Fire can be found, and the area before the altar, furnished with benches, serves as a place of worship for the novices and the common folk. The courtyard in front of the church connects all the different buildings. Alongside its edges, roofed corridors lead to the commons where the magicians and the novices sleep. The dormitories of the novices are quite simple, furnished only with beds and chests for their personal belongings. The simple lifestyle emphasizes their devotion to their god. Them leaving behind any substantial connection to their former life could be interpreted as abandoning their sinful past. The bedchambers of the magicians, on the other hand, are quite commodious and also have additional furniture. The left-hand side of the monastery holds 2 important areas: the chapel, where the paladins who are stationed in Khorinis consecrate their powerful ore weapons at the shrine of Innos, and the library, where the chosen mages, and in rare cases, novices, study the mysteries of the arcane arts. On the right is a spacious building, the Wine Vault, housing the production and storage of the goods. A little further down the corridor, a stairwell is located, leading into the cellar. Down below, we find the alchemy lab, the treasury, the pantry, the reliquary, and the library of the council. The library holds a secret passage which leads into another vault, which was used by Xardis for his studies before the time of the barrier. The architecture is inspired by the real-world Romanesque style monasteries of the Christian faith, which was prevalent around 900 AD to the 11th, in some parts even up until the 13th century. Many characteristics can be seen in-game, like the rose window, stained glass, the cloistered courtyard, foliate masks or green men, curved ceilings, and the crypt. The monastery was built before the time of Roba I, and it became the spiritual center of the Innos faith on Khorinis. In its vaults, holy relics of great historical importance are kept. The Shield of Fire was once used by Dominique, a paladin who fought in the War of the Southern Isles, and the Hammer of Innos, which was the weapon of Roba I, who used it to slay a stone sentinel, a lithic guardian which seems to be a kind of golem, with one mighty blow. Another relic, unbeknownst to the Order, was found here by Xardis, the Tears of Innos. According to legends, Enos wept for 13 years when he realized he had to fight his brother Beliar. His tears fell onto Morgrad, and those who consumed them were bestowed with wisdom, clarity, and great powers. They became the first of the Order of Fire. Before the barrier came into existence, Xardis came to the monastery of Khorinis. During his time as a magician of fire, his interest in summoning, necromancy, and the dark arts grew, and he secluded himself, studying in the deep vaults below the church. When he departed from the old camp under the barrier, Pyrokar became the highest-ranking magician to lead the order on Khorinis, while Choristo became the highest-ranking member inside of the colony. With the arrival of the nameless hero in Khorinis, the monastery plays a big role in preparing him for his final fight. The book, Halls of Urderoth, which he gave to Pyrokar as an act of faith from Xardis, was stored deep within the library and contained the information he needed to find Beliar's Eastern Invocation Temple. The monastery is almost self-sufficient. Surrounded by a mountain lake, they have access to fresh water and maybe even fish. They also keep sheep, which give them access to a variety of foods like meats for sausages and also milk. The cultivation of grapes and the production of wine is an essential part of their trade, supplying the harbor town and the tavern. It is possible that their wine also made its way into the prison colony. The courtyard also houses a herbery. The plants are then processed in the alchemy lab and used for brewing potions. The novices hold the lowest rank and make up the majority inside the monastery. Every young man wishing to become a member needs to bring gifts to be accepted into the order. These gifts include a generous donation of 1,000 gold pieces and a sheep. The novices come from all sorts of social backgrounds. Some have wealthy families like Aegon, being the nephew of the governor of Khorinis, or they were of poorer descent and their parents had to scrimp and save for their son's inception into the monastery. Once they are permitted to enter, they are given the novice's robe and a quarterstaff, which stands for their defensive capabilities. The robes are quite simple and consist of a red textile tunic with no sleeves, with ornaments of the holy flame woven into its lower parts. The tunic is not very long, reaching down to the knees, so it can be mistaken by a skirt by uneducated townsfolk. The characteristic black stole, albeit in a more simplified form, is worn above the tunic. They also receive braces made from either textiles or leather. The footwear might be a typical boot or shoes with additional shin guards made of compound materials. The tasks of the novices have a wide range, from cleaning out the dormitories, tending to the sheep and the herbery, running errands, pressing wine and delivering it to the city, to studying the mystic nature of the fire and praying to their god Innos. Only the most eager novices gained access to the library, a privilege that had to be worked for. Some novices spent years inside the monastery walls doing menial tasks without ever gaining access to the holy knowledge of their order. When the time comes, some novices are chosen by the High Council to participate in the trial of magic. The first one to return will join the ranks of the magicians and will be inducted into the mysteries of the arcane arts. The trial of magic was shrouded in metaphors. One had to leave the monastery and follow the signs of Innos. Those signs were the way shrines which led into the northern mountains. At the end of the way, they eventually find a hidden cave which holds the secret to their initiation, a blank runestone. Once a novice brings it back to the monastery, he becomes a magician of fire, finally being able to study the practical aspects of magic itself. However, there is another way to become a magician. If a novice feels like he's ready to ascend to the next rank, but wasn't elected by the council for the trial of magic, he could demand the trial of fire. This trial should test the participants' intelligence, strength, and dexterity. 3 virtues, 3 tasks. The first quest is given by Pyrokar, the same one all the other participants had to fulfill: follow the signs of Innos. The second one was given by Ulthar, who told us to create a rune of the fire arrow. The third quest is given by Serpentes, who wants us to kill the living rock, a stone golem which could only be slain by unconventional means, by stealing one of the relics stored in the vaults, the Hammer of Innos. With this method, a young novice can bypass years of waiting, but these trials are quite dangerous and often led to the death of young and impatient minds. The last one to accomplish the trial was Serpentes, member of the High Council, which means it had been decades since anyone succeeded in the trial of fire. The life of a novice is hard, and it takes a strong commitment to strive for an ascension to the inner circle of magicians. While they are a foundational part of the life inside the monastery walls, it can take them several years to be recognized as a worthy candidate for the trial of magic. After completing the trial, the aspirant is then eligible to swear the oath of the flame, ready to become a magician. Once they are taught the basics of the arcane arts, they are now able to move freely in the monastery. The library and the main vault are now open to them, where they can deepen their studies. With a new rank, they also receive a new garment, a long and heavy textile robe reaching down to the feet, embroidered with symbols of flame. The long sleeves also bear the signs of fire. The characteristic stole, this time made out of thicker studded material, maybe even leather, covers the shoulders and is folded in the chest area, flowing as one piece to the bottom. A belt is holding the rope together, its buckle displaying the sigil of flame. Once the basic training is completed, a magician of fire can specialize in certain magics or strive to be a jack of all trades. Most mages inside the monastery, however, specialized on a certain school of magic. Hyglus, for example, is a guardian of fire, teaching his pupils the might of the burning flame. Karas, on the other hand, is a master of summoning. Marduk, the mage who helps paladins to consecrate their ore blades, is proficient in lightning and ice spells. The magicians are also specialized regarding their function in and outside the monastery walls. Gorax is the keeper of the Vine Vault, overseeing the production and in charge of the logistics and financial aspects of the trade. Neoras is the alchemist, brewing his potions in the cellar below. Daron serves the people of the city, being the only fire mage inside of Khorinis. Leading the church on the island, a triumvirate of 3 archmages make up the High Council: Ulthar, Serpentes, and Pyrokar. While Pyrokar was the highest-ranking archmage, their combined wisdom was valued even at the court of the king, advising the monarch and representing his and Innos' spiritual force on Khorinis. When Xardis left the Order during the time of the Barrier, Pyrokar became the mightiest magician of fire. He was the one who handed the letter to the nameless hero, setting in motion the events inside the barrier. The robes of the High Council differ much from those we have seen inside the barrier, worn by Choristo. The base garment is of dark reddish colors with golden ornaments in the shape of flames embroidered in the sleeves and at the bottom of the robe. The stole is lavish and consists of 2 layers, both folded across the chest, flowing as one piece and held together by a belt which is similar to the ones ordinary mages wear. The High Council also wears a pendant and a glowing amulet. Although the Order of Fire exists almost everywhere in the realm, the trial of magic might be different for every monastery and church. Not every location has way shrines conveniently lined up, leading to a hidden cave where a blank rune can be found. This method sounds very exclusive to Khorinis, and the same could be said about the Trial of Fire. Speaking of which, the description of that trial is very vague, so that every council may create their own tests for the aspiring novices. Let's also speculate about the aftermath. We don't know what happened to the monastery and its inhabitants after the events that led to the destruction of the Avatar Beliars on Eldorath. It could be possible that the monastery still remained even if the island faced an orcish invasion. After all, its location made it very easy to defend and to isolate oneself from the outside world. It is to be remembered that they had fresh water and food, making them self-sustained and giving them a huge chance of survival, not to mention that capable mages resided within the monastery's walls, ready to rain fire upon any foe that might have arrived. It is also not very clear how the faith of Innos came to be. On the one hand, we know that Roba I was made the chosen of Innos to conquer the land in his name. On the other, we are aware of the fact that during Innos' time of weeping, his tears bestowed great might upon those who drank them, making them the first of his followers. So, who was the first to embrace Innos' grace? A further question arises when talking about the monastery's history. It is mentioned that the structure was built before the time of Roba I, but which function did it have before that? Did a different religion exist which was practiced inside of its walls? I can't think of any religion that could have lived there, because it is implied that the religion surrounding Innos was the first. Or was it? Even though Innos was the first god, it doesn't necessarily mean that the humans worshipped him first too. Maybe the followers of Adenos started their cult years before the Church of Innos came to be, and the monastery was once their spiritual center. What do you think? With all that said, this episode comes to a close. If I have forgotten anything, please let me know in the comments. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you and your families. May the warmth of our Lord Enos engulf your souls for eternity.